allowing a warrior to unleash 100% or even 120% of their combat potential in any given environment. The true power of an 11th level technique is only revealed through grueling practice and first-hand experience. 5 times gravity is a suitable starting point for me. This is my current baseline under normal conditions. At 5 times the standard gravity, I should just barely be able to execute the movements of the stellar body refining technique. Anything higher would likely be overwhelming. However, Ling was well aware this was just a baseline. The stellar body refining technique was a secret that could not be casually revealed to outsiders. Therefore, he had to seek out greater pressure, an immense pressure that could push him to his absolute limits. Under those conditions, he would have to keep increasing the gravity multiplier. Ling calmly walked over to the control panel and lightly pressed the button. Ling can't take it anymore. He's about to shut down the gravity field. After all, we're talking 5 times gravity. It's astonishing he managed to last this long. Honestly, I wouldn't have survived for even a second. Outside the training chamber, everyone watched through the window as Ling reached for the controls. Almost everyone subconsciously assumed that Ling had finally reached his breaking point and was about to end his training session. A crowd gathered around the display screen by the door. Xiaoyang lingered among them, his expression solemn, yet his eyes burned with intense anticipation. It was obvious he was deeply invested in the outcome. The group huddled before the small monitor, all of them jostling for a better view, with those at the front practically pressing their faces against the screen. In an instant, a dead silence fell over the crowd. Every eye was locked onto the small display, their faces frozen, as if they were staring at a ghost. Someone tried to speak, their mouth opening and closing, but not a single word escaped. They all saw the line of text glowing clearly on the small display. 6 times gravity is on. Ling hadn't quit the training room. Xiaoyang stood motionless in the crowd, staring at the large number 6 on the screen with a look of utter shock. At that very moment, as everyone watched in stunned silence, the number on the display changed once more. 7 times gravity is on. In a flash, the crowd erupted into absolute chaos. Elsewhere, in the main control room, Dong Qingshu and Qin Xiaojun were reviewing the progress reports from the training camp. Today, another 2 students had failed to endure and had applied to withdraw from the program. Dong Qingshu casually tossed the 2 documents aside, speaking with an air of indifference. Holding his coffee, Qin Xiaojun offered a casual reassurance. They've all been pampered at home, hailed as the city's top geniuses and highly anticipated. Naturally, they can't handle the intensity here. They crumble under the slightest pressure. They can't stand this level of difficulty. If so, how could they possibly persevere on a real battlefield against alien beasts? With actual swords and spears, Dong Qingshu said with a sneer. A genius from the safe zone is never a true genius. In fact, they are often the weakest. Only a prodigy who has been baptized by the battlefield is a real genius, the kind who becomes strongest. You're being too harsh, Qin Xiaojun said, shaking his head. The overall quality of this class of students is actually quite good. I estimate that at least 80% of them will last until the final day of the camp, or so I hope. Look at the G-Force room in the movement studio. People are working relentlessly to set new records. A hint of surprise then flashed across Qin Xiaojun's face as he clicked on a new alert. A glint of excitement appeared in his eyes. Someone just shattered the historical record in the gravity training room, Qin Xiaojun announced. Beside him, Dong Qinggu's interest was immediately piqued. Already? Who was it? Chaiyang. That kid's got potential. Chaiming's training is paying off. I should treat him to a meal later. However, Qin Shan's expression grew increasingly perplexed as he read on. After processing the update, he abruptly looked up, staring at Dong Qinggu in a daze, and stated, "It wasn't Chaiyang. It's someone you would never expect. Someone I can't imagine." Dong Qinggu was baffled. Then who could it be? Qin Xiaojun locked eyes with Dong Qinggu and enunciated each word carefully. It's Ling. Dong Qinggu had just taken a sip of coffee and promptly sprayed it everywhere in shock. Who, Ling? You mean the kid who's been holed up in his room for over a month finally came out? And he broke the record? Dong Qinggu fired off a series of questions, his face a mask of utter disbelief. Qin Xiaojun nodded, thinking to himself, it seems his month-long isolation wasn't a total waste. Combined with his innate strength, he was never the weakest contender. Achieving this feat isn't entirely impossible. Dong Qinggu grabbed the cup, wiped his mouth, and remarked, "You've got a point, but that kid still delivered a massive surprise. It seems the Whetstone project can proceed as planned." Dong Qinggu smiled, speaking with newfound confidence. With Ling back in the game, things just got better. I was worried Callan's power was advancing too quickly, and that no one in the training camp could challenge her. Just as they spoke, a sharp, distinct notification sound echoed through the room. The alert seemed to possess a magnetic quality, drawing the eyes of both Qin Xiaojun and Dong Qinggu simultaneously toward the computer screen. Qin Xiaojun, feeling an unexplainable mix of emotions, slowly guided the mouse and clicked on the new message. When the words eightfold gravity and Ling leaped out at them, their breath caught in their throats. Dong Qinggu was utterly stunned, at a complete loss for words. "I need to see this for myself. I'm going to the gravity room," Qin Xiaojun declared, unable to contain himself any longer. Dong Qinggu's eyes lit up as she quickly stood as well. "I'm coming with you." Meanwhile, Ling's body was held in a slightly crouched stance, methodically resisting and adapting to the crushing pressure enveloping him. He was pushing the breath of the earth technique to its absolute limit. Through its continuous use under such immense gravitational force, Ling's comprehension of the breadth of the earth was steadily deepening. This is nearly my limit, Ling thought, knowing that this is the path he must walk until he becomes strongest. After all, a multi-gravity environment isn't the same as real combat. It tests a warrior's very blood, physique, and willpower. With this kind of pressure applied uniformly across the entire body, techniques like stellar power are completely useless. Then, it's time to try times that times technique, Ling resolved. He took a deep breath as his spiritual power flooded his body like a torrent, converging at the location of his heart. His mental energy transformed into fine threads, and in a matter of moments, it wove an invisible heart, a perfect replica of his own. This new, hidden heart, the culmination of over a month of relentless, non-stop effort, overlaid perfectly with his original one. Both hearts began to beat as one. Instantly, a majestic power erupted from Ling's core. Within the silent chamber, Ling could practically hear the sound of his own blood roaring as it surged through his veins. This was the sound of his blood value skyrocketing. As it climbed, the immense pressure from 8 times normal gravity began to feel manageable. The oppressive gravity also felt lighter. Merely after the initial construction of the heart meridian, his chi and blood had already been enhanced by nearly 10%. The terrifying efficacy of the Divine Illumination Sutra was undeniable. Ling's eyes were resolute as he began to straighten his back, little by little. 8. A full 8 times the force of gravity. Outside the chamber, an observer whispered in a sluggish daze, "He's actually trying to stand up." A crowd of onlookers, their faces etched with shock and utter disbelief, had been rendered speechless, unable to find the right words to articulate the profound feelings stirring in their hearts. At that very moment, Ling slowly began to stretch his body, fighting against the chains of gravity. A warrior's foundation is built upon their chi and blood, and any increase in its value directly improves the warrior's strength in all facets. This increase of nearly 10% in his chi and blood value brought a colossal improvement to Ling, and unlike techniques reliant on star power, this enhancement demanded nothing from his physical fitness. It was also worlds apart from ordinary chi and blood augmentation methods. The boost from the Divine Illumination Sutra was pure, with no adverse side effects and a much longer duration. Ling could feel his spiritual power being steadily consumed, knowing this incredible increase would remain in effect until his spiritual energy was completely depleted. As a chime sounded, everyone's gaze was unconsciously drawn toward the display screen outside the chamber. The hearts of many were in their throats, fearing that the number on the display might accidentally jump up another level, to persist for 4 minutes under 8 times gravity. Surely he can't still be thinking about increasing it further, right? But just a moment later, immense cracks spiderwebbed across the reinforced window of the gravity room. Everyone standing close to the window was bewildered, staring at Ling in a stupor. In that instant, a sudden wave of pressure erupted from the gravity room, forcing all of them down to their knees. Someone shouted in panic, "What is going on? We are completely outside the gravity room, yet we're feeling such immense pressure." Ling, what on earth is he attempting to do? Abruptly, the crowd fell silent, their eyes fixed upon the small display screen with expressions as if they were looking at a ghost. They struggled to choke out a sentence, but not a single word could escape their lips. They saw on that small display a line of stark, clear words. 10 times gravity is on. Even Ling was violently forced down to his knees by the cataclysmic gravitational force. The very floor inside the gravity room began to collapse under the massive pressure of 10 times gravity, and Ling was slammed flat against the fractured floor. A torrent of thoughts flooded Ling's mind. It is so unbelievably intense. Every single cell in my body is screaming out in agony. My body feels as if it is going to be compressed into nothing. It's taking all of my willpower just to remain conscious, let alone move even a single inch. This is the power of 10 times gravitational force. This is completely beyond any realm I can currently handle. Yet, a voice roared in his heart. This is exactly what I need to go from being the weakest to the strongest. Ling had a profound realization. To achieve his goals, he needed exactly this kind of crushing pressure to force himself beyond his limits. What kind of person does it take to truly change the future and overturn a doomed destiny? Is it someone who has mastered high-ranking martial arts, someone blessed with incredible natural talent, or a person who possesses unlimited resources? A storm of questions rose in Ling's heart as he fought with everything he had to stand under the immense gravitational force. The only correct answer is someone who can endlessly surpass their own limits. Suddenly, the answer became clear in his soul, and with nothing but his pure willpower, Ling began to rise, proving he is the one who becomes strongest. The pressure was immense. In the face of such a shocking display, words and expressions felt utterly inadequate. They just needed to be sure of one simple thing. Could this possibly be a dream? Was it conceivable they had simply dozed off from exhaustion during their own training and were now trapped in a vivid slumber, yet to be woken? Yan Yan clamped her hands tightly over her mouth, terrified that an excited gasp might escape her lips. Within her stunning eyes, only one image was reflected. The young man behind the one-way glass, painstakingly forcing himself to rise from the floor, bit by bit. Why did she feel so overwhelmed by the sight of Lu Xing's return? Was it merely because they shared the same origins? Perhaps even Yan Yan herself hadn't fully grasped the reason. As she stared, a single thought screamed in her mind. The monster Lu Xing is back, on his path as he becomes strongest. Indeed, nearly anyone who had ever stepped into a gravity chamber understood that in such an environment, pushing your body to its absolute limit meant paralysis. Lifting even a single finger becomes an impossible task, requiring someone on the outside to help deactivate the gravity. And yet, Lu Xing not only managed to stand up, but was actually able to walk over to the gravity control panel all by himself. A moment later, the door to the chamber slowly hissed open from the inside. The expressions on every onlooker's face froze solid as they watched a tall, handsome young man stride out of the room with complete and utter composure. Lu Xing noticed the crowd of people gathered around the doorway, but his expression remained unchanged after halting his cultivation. As he released his highly focused mental energy, he confirmed that he had already sensed their presence. Just as he emerged, a pair of hands tentatively reached out toward Lu Xing, offering a towel. Lu Xing, a towel. A pretty girl bravely took the initiative, presenting a clean white towel. Her face was flushed crimson, her excitement making her words tumble together incoherently. A few of the others nearby couldn't help but cast envious glances her way. Lu Xing paused, momentarily surprised, before quickly accepting the towel and nodding at the girl. "Thank you," he said. He had a faint recollection of these young men and women. They were likely among the students who had come to participate in the training in Bass City this time. No need to thank me. It's my pleasure," she stammered. It appeared that for Lu Xing to simply accept her towel was seen as an incredible honor, a moment of immense pride for her. Lu Xing took the towel to wipe away the sweat from his body before turning to inspect his results on the display screen. Upon seeing the specific recorded time, a look of regret flickered across Lu Xing's face. If I had known it would consume so much time, I wouldn't have let it deduct points for 3 whole hours. My points were just needlessly wasted. Then, Lu Xing recalled something, pulling out his identification card and swiping it across the display's reader. He was fairly certain he had shattered the gravity chamber record this time. If my memory serves, breaking. The record comes with a point reward. A new value flashed onto the screen. Remaining points: 4,335. Before Lu Xing could even react, a breathless gasp came from the crowd. What? His points? Over 4,000. All of our points combined wouldn't even come close to half of his total. The sheer gap in power made them all feel like the weakest trainees in existence. Many in the crowd instinctively reached out, their hands going to the identification cards tucked away in their pockets. A paltry number flashed in their minds, and a wave of despair washed over their faces. The grim reality was that the points of everyone present, all added up, were still less than half of Lu Xing's. More than 4,000 points. Lu Xing nodded in satisfaction. This was more than enough to splurge on himself. Even if he stayed in the training room every day until the camp ended, he might not spend them all. All right, where to next? Lu Xing thought, already planning his next move. He determined his path, and the crowd parted before him like the sea, spontaneously clearing the way. Lu Xing strode forward in a random direction, an aura of effortless power radiating from him like a gentle breeze. A crowd of onlookers trailed behind him, maintaining a respectful distance as if drawn by a magnetic force. Where could he be headed? We have to see this. Yanan stood there in a daze, his eyes locked on Lu Xing, the boy from his own city who was on the path to where he becomes strongest. His presence was utterly domineering, a titan standing head and shoulders above everyone else. The spectacle was like a majestic tiger prowling through the forest, with all other creatures following in its wake. The girl standing next to Yanan couldn't help but voice the question on everyone's mind. Lu Xing's talent is in strength, isn't it? It's unbelievable that he shattered so many records. Is it possible his vitality has already reached rank 4? Yanan, still gazing in the direction Lu Xing had gone, heard the girl's words and a realization struck him. He instantly connected the dots, thinking, strength-type talent. He's heading straight for the footwork training room. Meanwhile, inside one of the footwork training facilities, Meng Jie was pushing himself to master level 2 of his regiment. The room was a web of crimson lasers that seemed to hunt Meng Jie relentlessly, and he was expertly evading each beam that shot toward him. He danced between the beams for a considerable time, but eventually, exhaustion caught up to him. A single laser grazed him, bringing the session to an abrupt end. Instantly, a synthetic AI voice echoed through the room, announcing, "Training session concluded. Calculating results for this session. The second stage is 87% complete. Congratulations, martial artist. Your body technique now surpasses 52% of all trainees." Hearing the encouraging feedback, Meng Jie paused, a satisfied smile spreading across his face. This session had pushed his completion of the second stage up by another 6%. It's common knowledge that every performance in the body technique room is automatically uploaded to the Wuming terminal, updating one's global ranking in real time. This data from the Footwork Hall constantly feeds into the World Martial Alliance's global framework. I've already surpassed more than half the martial artists on the entire planet. We're talking billions of people left in my dust, right? A smug grin played on Meng Jie's lips as he thought to himself, just as I thought, people are not born equal, some are destined to leave the weakest behind. With my innate speed-type talent and exclusive instruction from instructor Chen Xiaojun, the gap between me and everyone else is already immeasurable. Meng Jie's self-important thoughts continued as he strode towards the exit. Even just observing my training should be an enlightening experience for those ordinary martial artists. Basking in a profound sense of accomplishment and self-satisfaction, Meng Jie stepped out of the training room, expecting a crowd of admirers. He was poised to receive the waves of awe and admiration from those waiting outside, but the scene he anticipated never materialized. The hallway was deserted. The usual group of people who would linger by the door was nowhere in sight. What's going on? Meng Jie felt a flicker of confusion. He had been pushing himself to the limit in there just a moment ago. His whole goal was to astound the others, but unexpectedly, there wasn't a single soul around to witness his achievement. Wait, even Instructor Dong and Instructor Chen are over there. What is everyone so captivated as an instructor giving a demonstration? A flurry of questions raced through his mind. Meng Jie stood frozen, his face a mask of bewilderment. Shaking off his confusion, Meng Jie quickly made his way toward the gathering. As he reached the spot, Meng Jie scanned the dense crowd and quickly spotted his own usual entourage among them, and shouldered his way through. Hey, what's all the commotion? What's everyone staring at? Ming Jinho demanded, clapping a hand on someone's shoulder. Growing impatient, he was met with a quick reply. It's Luing. We're all watching Luing. He just went inside. Luing? You mean that sleepy-eyed kid from B City, the one who was practically the weakest of the bunch? Ming Jinho froze for a second before bursting into laughter. You can't be serious. You think he can break my record? That's insane. The man gave him a peculiar, pitying look from head to toe before turning away dismissively, muttering, and just who are you supposed to be? Meng Jinyo was left feeling utterly bewildered, but just as they spoke, the entire training hall was suddenly bathed in an intense crimson glow. The boy's head snapped forward as he yelled, What in the world? What's happening? Meng Jinyo was equally startled, his mouth agape. Both of their eyes were wide with disbelief, as if they were witnessing something truly monstrous. A thought screamed in Meng Jinho's mind. Impossible. That's every single laser emitter activated at maximum power. He couldn't trust what his eyes were showing him. Inside that room, if even a sliver of your body touches a beam of light, you fail instantly. The training's difficulty is designed to escalate gradually, in stages. Meanwhile, Luing had calmly read the introductory rules for the training chamber and now possessed a clear understanding of its mechanics. So, the objective is simply to evade every single laser beam, is that right? He mused aloud after finishing the instructions. The walls surrounding the chamber were covered in a dizzying array of thumb-sized circular openings. They were packed so densely that they numbered in the tens of thousands, and it seemed any one of them could potentially fire a laser. It appears there's no way to visually predict which port will activate next, he observed. This inability to foresee the direction of the attack is one of the primary challenges of this physical conditioning. But for me, for one who plans on becoming the strongest in the world, a challenge like this is practically non-existent, Luing thought, reaching out to press the start button. As if on cue, a crimson beam of light shot forth, grazing past his ear as he casually tilted his head, striking the far wall. The key was his mental strength. Luing's immense spiritual power had already enveloped the entire training room, allowing him to accurately perceive the subtle energy fluctuations within each laser probe. A sharp beep signaled the machine's activation, and in the next instant, several probes on the walls flashed, firing a volley of red beams directly at Luing. Ah, so this is how it works. You just have to dodge the light, correct? With a slight twist of his body, the crimson line harmlessly swept past him. Luing managed to evade every single beam with flawless efficiency and a complete lack of effort. For someone whose senses were honed by the stellar body technique, these light beams moved at a crawl. He could easily discern the trajectory of every single beam long before it was even fired. It's still somewhat challenging to predict an opponent's attack by reading subtle shifts in their muscles and expressions during a fight, but predicting a machine? That's almost too easy. Luing mused. He stood at the room's center, casually moving his body to avoid the onslaught of light, all while lost in thought. His posture was so serene and composed, it looked less like intense physical training and more like a gentle morning exercise routine in a park. Outside the chamber, the crowd of onlookers exchanged glances, their faces a mixture of confusion and profound awe. How was he even doing that? Someone couldn't help but whisper, but no one had an answer. Not even Ming Jinho, the self-proclaimed genius who had always carried himself with unshakable confidence, was now completely stunned, staring at the impossible feat unfolding before him. Inside the training room, anyone else would be a trembling, nervous wreck, completely unable to focus. The chamber is filled with tens of thousands of laser probes. No one can predict which probes will activate next, and even the slightest misstep means getting grazed by a beam, getting instantly seared by the light. Are you absolutely certain this is his first time in the body technique training room? Ming Jinho questioned the boys around him, his voice laced with disbelief. One boy nodded, his expression complex. Yes, all of us were with him just before this. Luing was in the gravity training room and shattered the record by enduring 10 times the standard gravitational force. Ming Jinho was rendered speechless. He collapsed to his knees, staring at the figure inside, who was practically strolling through the chaotic storm of light. He fell into a spiral of self-doubt. Wasn't he supposed to be the weakest among us? Didn't he just sleep for an entire month? How can the gap between us be this immense? A storm of questions rose in Jinna's mind. How on earth did this kid manage this? Is this really his first time doing physical conditioning? Meanwhile, Dongqi stared intently at Luing through the surveillance monitor and muttered in disbelief. Why does it look like he's done this hundreds of times? No, that can't be it. Even practicing hundreds of times wouldn't make it look this effortless. While the first stage of training isn't impossibly difficult, the sequence for each session is completely random and unpredictable. How could he possibly know where each beam of light would emerge from? Dong Qinghua was glued to the screen, her gaze flickering up occasionally. She had a faint inkling about Luing's strange performance, a guess forming in her heart, but her own battle intuition quickly dismissed it. This kid's actual combat prowess is off the charts, and his innate combat sense is exceptionally sharp. It's not entirely impossible for him to achieve this, Dong Qinghua explained to herself. Just then, 6 crimson rays shot out simultaneously, converging on Luing. They were staggered, forcing Luing to rely solely on his reflexes and movement speed to evade. At that very moment, as Dong Qinghua monitored him, a beam of light shot towards Luing from his blind spot. Without even looking, he tilted his head slightly, dodging it with absolutely no effort. Dong Qinghua, who had been watching his every move, occasionally comparing him to Seelin, was utterly stunned. Her eyes widened as she finally realized what Luing was using. It wasn't combat intuition at all, it was foresight, an incredible ability that only true psychic masters could command. Witnessing Luing's impossible reaction speed confirmed her wildest theory. He was completely calm during the level 2 footwork test, not even breaking a sweat. So much for training, Luing thought. If my goal is to become the strongest, I can't keep cheating with my mental power like this. It completely defeats the purpose. I'll save it for when it's absolutely necessary. With that decision made, the spiritual power that had enveloped the entire training room silently receded. But then, Luing's expression shifted slightly. He realized that the moment his own mental power was withdrawn, another one immediately took its place, blanketing the training room and brazenly sweeping over his body. Judging by the sheer strength of this mental power, it had to be Dong Qinghua. A new idea suddenly sparked in Luing's mind. If Dong Qinghua is watching, it seems my plan can finally be put into motion. Meanwhile, outside, Qin Zhaijun noticed Dong Qinghua's intense focus and asked, "What are you up to?" "Nothing," she replied, as a wave of uncertainty flashed across her face. She thought to herself, I must be overthinking this. I already tested him and confirmed he had absolutely no trace of psychic energy. So why do I suddenly have this overwhelming urge to test him again? Luing refocused his concentration on the movement drill before him, effortlessly clearing the first 60% of the second stage. His expression remained utterly calm until he hit that 60% mark, at which point a hint of seriousness finally crept onto his face. Having shattered the first plateau, his technique was now challenging the second, yet he still seemed completely in control. As the beams multiplied and their sweep speed intensified, Luing gradually felt a shift within himself. His movement, once stuck at that second bottleneck, began to feel fluid again. His foundation of skills was simply too immense. For someone with his level of preparation, a little pressure was all it took to make a breakthrough seem simple. But just as Luing started to feel a surge of anticipation and excitement, the barrage of light beams came to a sudden halt. Luing froze, stunned for a second, before he quickly processed what happened. It was over. The second stage of the training was complete. Luing had successfully cleared the entire phase of the movement drill. Aside from a few who were cheering, most of the onlookers were simply dumbfounded, staring at each other in disbelief, unable to react. Then, the crowd erupted. A wave of shocked exclamations broke the silence. "No way! The second stage of the body training is already finished?" Just like that? I barely had time to process it. The murmurs among the spectators grew, filled not just with surprise, but also with a profound sense of confusion. In their eyes, the trial Luing had just completed seemed entirely different from the brutal second stage they remembered. Not far from the commotion, Qin Xiaojun and Dong Qinghua were observing the scene intently. Dong Qinghua's eyes narrowed to slits as she asked, "You see it, don't you?" Qin Xiaojun nodded, his expression complex. "Perfect form," he replied with gravity, "and not just any perfect form either. I'd wager he's been at this perfect level for some time now. Otherwise, there's no way he could make it look so effortless." Dong Qinghua couldn't help but sigh. Perfect realm boxing, perfect realm movement. Just how in the world did this kid train? He's never even set foot on a real battlefield. Is it even possible for someone from the safe zone to reach this level at his age? Qin Xiaojun replied with a helpless shrug. You have to admit, some people in this world are simply born different, possessing a natural talent that is several or even 10 times greater than an ordinary person. It's the gap that separates the gifted from the weakest. After seeing that, do you still think Seelin has a chance against him? Dong Qinghua remained silent, merely saying, "Let's just keep watching." Suddenly, a new announcement echoed through the room. The third stage of footwork and movement training will now commence. Instantly, the machines altered their attack patterns, becoming far more lethal. Thousands of spherical projectiles suddenly shot towards Luing from all directions. Outside the training area, among the onlookers, Ming Jinho was still reeling in shock. He stood frozen, utterly unable to comprehend the scene unfolding before him. He grit his teeth, muttering, "So that's stage 3? This is the kind of trial one faces if he truly wants to become the strongest." In that moment, inside the training room, Luing was already confronting the third stage of the movement drill. From the vantage point of the crowd, it was painfully obvious that the effortless grace Luing displayed before was rapidly vanishing. The difficulty of this third stage was several orders of magnitude higher than the second. A web of red beams crisscrossed the space, their paths completely unpredictable. Just watching them was enough to feel an immense pressure bearing down. On numerous occasions, the entire crowd was certain that Luing was about to be hit, only to see him evade by a hair's breadth at the last possible second. The entire ordeal was breathtaking. The trial was fraught with peril, causing onlookers to sweat with vicarious anxiety for him. The challenge was escalating, as the laser beams were now positioned in a complex array to make evasion seem impossible. Not bad, Luing mused. I suppose it's time to put in some real effort. While everyone else watched with bated breath, it turned out Luing had only been warming up until this very moment. The wealth of experience he had accumulated in the dream world was more than enough to carry him to this stage. In the distance, Luing, still within the training room, appeared to regain his composure during the second stage and then decisively broke through into the micro-realm of physical conditioning. Luing let out a sigh of relief, a flicker of triumph crossing his features. He had intentionally put himself under pressure, using no special abilities and relying solely on his raw movement to weave through the lethal rays. As a result, the infamous second bottleneck of body technique was completely shattered. At this new level of agility, his body's instinctive reactions reached an unimaginable height, far surpassing even the speed of his own neural responses. There was almost no need for conscious thought. His body would subconsciously execute the perfect evasion. With such a movement technique, he thought, in the dream space, I could even dare to challenge the master-level zombies now. As he pondered this, he meticulously analyzed the new sensations this heightened state provided. How long has it been since they last spoke of the body's perfect state, that is the subtle realm? Even the hardened veterans who have been on the battlefield, those martial artists of the 4th and 5th levels, how many of them ever managed to refine their technique to the subtle state? Yet Luing had just achieved it so casually. I recall I was only 22 years old when I broke through into the subtle realm, Qin Zajun commented. Dong Qinhua shot him a look and said nonchalantly, I was 25 when I managed it, but I'm a dedicated speed-type martial artist. Our type naturally gets a bonus when it comes to body technique training. Xiao Jun was going mad, wanting to scratch his head in disbelief. How old is this kid? 17? And he's a power-type talent. Is this even reasonable? Can you tell me if this is reasonable? Back in the training room, as the completion for stage 3 hit 15%, a beam of light suddenly flashed dangerously close to Ling's eyes. Luing was only just able to dodge the laser. I'm starting to feel the difficulty now. Simply relying on my psychic foresight is no longer enough, the thought crossed Luing's mind. Outside the training room, Qin Zajun's eyes were glued to Luing, observing every minute shift in his body. Luing is not looking so effortlessly relaxed anymore. At that moment, inside the practice room, dozens of rays were densely interwoven into a deadly net, and the gap between each beam was no larger than a small square. The speed was also astonishingly fast, nearly instantaneous. Luing, who had just broken through to a new realm of movement and regained a sense of ease, immediately felt the crushing pressure return. Luing took a deep, controlled breath, and the very rhythm of his breathing changed miraculously. Switch, breath of the wind. In a flash, Luing's body seemed to be carried by an unseen breeze. In that moment, the already incredibly fast speed of Luing suddenly accelerated even more, and the completion percentage for stage 3 instantly leaped to 62%. This was the second special breathing method that Luing had mastered during his month-long retreat, the breath of the wind. In the eyes of the outsiders, Luing's speed had transformed into a phantom. This is how one truly times becomes strongest asterisk. Luing's movements were an absolute blur to the naked eye. Many could only stare at the intersecting rays with shocked and bewildered expressions. They simply couldn't comprehend how, at such an impossibly close distance, he could avoid being touched by a single beam. It was all pure, unadulterated agility. In that instant, Luing's figure seemed to grow immense and almost legendary in the eyes of the students. A powerful aura of mystery now enveloped him completely. This young man wasn't just in a subtle state, his very being radiated power. His physical conditioning and reaction speed were terrifyingly fast, a level far beyond what any ordinary level 3 warrior could achieve. Qin Xiaojun smacked his lips, sighing in awe. After Luing's continuous breakthroughs, the training within the 3rd stage had become almost child's play. 80%, 100%. With a soft chime, the 3rd stage of body conditioning was complete, and Luing halted his movements. He controlled the rhythm of his body, breathing gently to silently recover his strength. This was truly the dawn of a new era. He put on an incredible show for everyone today. He looks utterly exhausted. Let's head back, Qin Xiaojun said, turning to leave. But Dong Qinggu, extending her mental senses, was shocked to find that Luing wasn't done yet. No, wait, it appears Luing is going to continue, Dong Qinhua finished calmly. A voice then echoed from the speakers, stage 4 of footwork training will now commence. Qin Xiaojun, taken aback, hurriedly fixed his gaze back on the monitoring screen, where his own eyes began to widen. A trace of pure shock crept into his pupils as he shouted, no way! Even I have only just begun the 4th stage of footwork training. He's trying to master it all in a single day. This is the kind of trial that separates the weakest from the one who becomes strongest. Dong Qinghua, however, said nothing. She simply watched Luing with profound anticipation, eager to see the true depths of his potential. At that moment, Luing, inside the practice room, had already started to face the 4th stage of movement training. As stage 4 initiated, numerous controllers on the floor and walls activated. They suddenly shot beams into the air. Luing was startled for a split second, but instantly managed to dodge. Evading the attacks was becoming exponentially harder. The beams seemed to sweep out at the same time, but in reality, there was a minuscule distinction, a difference between fast and slow. Luing's challenge was to exploit this infinitesimal time gap to weave through the deadly light. He He had to swiftly avoid one ray after another as they formed a complex web designed to completely immobilize his movements. One can only imagine the sheer difficulty of this ordeal. As the stage progressed, the patterns of the rays became even more intricate. Someone from the crowd outside blurted out, "What is that pattern? Is it even possible to dodge something like that?" Their eyes were wide with disbelief. Even Ming Jina, who had been observing Ling, was now completely convinced of Ling's incredible prowess, yet the brutal mechanism of the training room's stages still left him shaken. The sheer, unforgiving difficulty of the trial haunted him. At the same time, Qin Xiaojun was focusing intently on Ling's every move. "Ling has reached the subtle realm," he murmured. "Let's see what he can really do now." The speed bonus from the breath of the wind was no longer enough. Ling's breathing grew more and more rapid, and sweat poured from his body in streams, but his resolve never wavered. In fact, his crystal-clear eyes only grew brighter, shining like brilliant stars in the night sky. "I'm getting close to my absolute limit." Ling narrowly evaded another ray. He risked a glance at the data on the wall. The completion rate for the fourth stage was only 30%, a number that would make the weakest warrior despair. Ling took a deep, steadying breath, and a dazzling light suddenly ignited within his eyes. "I will give it my all. This is how one becomes strongest." In the next breath, the entire room changed. A colossal wave of mental energy erupted from within him, violently expelling the two spiritual forces that had been locked in the air around him. His power exploded. Within his chest, two hearts pounded in unison as blood roared through his veins, and at that instant, Ling felt that the very walls were receding from his position. Everything before his eyes began to magnify and decelerate. It was the legendary King of Hell's divine illumination technique. Ling raised both hands to his sides and unleashed his immense psychic energy, which completely shrouded his body in a protective aura. Ling could now perceive the red laser beams drifting toward him at a surprisingly slow speed. The sensation was bizarre, as if the very flow of time had been bent to his will. A flash of enlightenment sparked in Ling's mind, bringing back the information on spiritual masters he had researched using the light brain in the dream space. He knew this state. The professional term used by spiritual masters to describe it was coming to him now. It was the sense of time, the perception of moments being stretched into an eternity. This happened when spiritual power achieved a qualitative evolution, a metamorphosis that was typically exclusive to third-level spiritual masters. This meant that Ling, after practicing the advanced diamond visualization method for just over a month, had finally ascended into the ranks of the third-level spiritual masters, a crucial step on the path where one becomes strongest. Meanwhile, outside the practice room, a tremendous roar startled everyone in the facility. All eyes turned in shocked curiosity toward the direction of the eruption. There they saw the chief instructor of the genius training camp, Dong Qinhua, standing not far away, her gaze fixed upon the training room with a profound and unreadable expression. Beneath Dong Qinhua's feet, the reinforced floor tiles had shattered into a massive spiderweb of cracks, as waves of terrifying and immense qi and blood fluctuations erupted wildly from her body. "So, you're a spiritual master, Ling?" A predatory smile spread across Dong Qinhua's face as she murmured the words almost unconsciously. Qin Xiaojun stared, stunned, at Dong Qinhua, from whom massive waves of psychic energy were now pouring. A colossal spiritual avatar began to form around her, forged from her own psychic power. "Are you insane?" Qin Xiaojun hissed in disbelief, but his warning went completely unheeded. Dong Qinhua's gaze remained locked onto the training room, deaf to everything and everyone around her. "I need to test him again," Dong Qinhua finally said in response to Qin Xiaojun, as she sent her psychic avatar surging toward the training room. It phased directly through the reinforced glass window, and inside the room, one could see that Ling was now effortlessly evading every laser beam, his breakthrough granting him unparalleled calm. But as he moved, he sensed a foreign psychic presence probing him, an energy attempting to invade his very being. A slight smile touched Ling's lips as he identified Dong Qinhua's psychic signature and raised a single hand in response. With a casual slicing motion, he cleaved right through the spiritual avatar, causing it to instantly disintegrate into nothing. The feedback sent a devastating shockwave back to Dong Qinhua's mind as her psychic projection was obliterated. For a brief, terrifying moment, the mighty instructor was made to feel like the weakest being in existence. She staggered, clutching her chest as she fought to endure the intense mental agony. Dong Qinhua slowly raised her head, locked eyes with Qin Xiaojun, and said in a low, strange tone, "Ling, he's a spiritual master, and his strength is not one bit inferior to mine." "What?" Qin Xiaojun exclaimed, unable to comprehend her words. "You can look, but you can't touch," Ling thought, having been aware of her from the start. Lu Xing, with his unique perception, instantly grasped his condition. "This is my absolute limit," he realized, not expecting that activating time sense for the first time would consume such a massive amount of psychic energy. To make matters worse, someone had even dared to interfere with his training. "I'm only halfway through stage 4, and I've already exhausted both breaths of wind and divine illumination. This is as far as my vitality can take me," Lu Xing concluded internally as he took another step forward. Suddenly, the swishing sound of the rain nets swept through the air. Lu Xing's body instantly went rigid before he relaxed, standing perfectly still. His expression was one of slight regret, but it was mixed with the acknowledgement that he had truly hit his wall. Lu Xing's gaze then shifted to the final score displayed on the room's status screen. Training session terminated. Result analysis. Stage 4 completion rate is 56%. Congratulations, martial artist. Your body technique surpasses 97% of all trainees. A melodic voice announced throughout the room. The crowd of onlookers at the doorway was utterly petrified, their mouths agape and their faces frozen in expressions of sheer disbelief, as if they'd been struck dumb. They could only stare as Lu Xing emerged from the training room, the announcement of his results still echoing in their minds. How many warriors exist in this world? It must be in the hundreds of millions. And Lu Xing, he's already surpassed nearly all of them in terms of physical skill. Ming Jinna, in particular, felt his head spin. He vividly remembered his own last report, which stated he had surpassed 52% of the world's warriors. In contrast, Lu Xing's score was 97%, making him feel like the weakest trainee here. That was a staggering 45% difference. Ming Jinha's pride was utterly crushed. Meanwhile, as Lu Xing heard the final report, he was having a very different internal monologue, reminding himself, there's still a full 3% of people with superior physical skills. To truly become the strongest, I can't ignore them. How many warriors does that represent? 3% could be millions. I am still far too weak and must push myself even harder. With that thought, Lu Xing pushed open the door to the movement practice room and strode out. As he did, Lu Xing allowed his psychic power to subtly revolve around his body. Dong Qinghua was the first to congratulate him for shattering 2 records in a single day. As she observed Lu Xing, her beautiful eyes shone with a brilliant light. She understood perfectly well what Lu Xing intended by releasing his spiritual power. It was an ancient, respectful greeting among fellow spiritual masters, a way to acknowledge one another's presence. Dong Qinghua immediately withdrew her own mental power in response and turned to depart, a clear sign that she now fully recognized Lu Xing's standing. Later that evening, after he had practiced the stellar body refinement techniques for several hours, a soldier approached with a message. Lu Xing, the chief instructor has summoned you. Please come with me. Upon arriving, Lu Xing heard a voice from ahead and looked up to see Dong Qinghua seated. Hello, chief instructor. Dong Qinghua acknowledged him with a nod and said, please, come in. The moment Qin Xiajun saw Lu Xing enter, his hand trembled violently, and his eyes locked onto the young man as if he were looking at some otherworldly being. Hello, Chief Instructor Qin, Lu Xing greeted him politely. Qin Xiajun gestured for Lu Xing to take a seat, saying, we've asked you here primarily to conduct a simple strength test, and then to discuss a certain matter with you. Dong Qinghua's office was equipped with professional testing instruments, including a blood analyzer, a device for measuring one's combat effectiveness index, and another strange apparatus he had never seen before. Dong Qinghua then took a sheet presented a single-use blood collection needle to Luing, inquiring, have you managed to test yourself at all recently? Luing simply shook his head in denial. Dong Qinghua seemed puzzled. Isn't there a blood testing device in the student dorms? After a brief hesitation, Luing admitted honestly, the needle in the dorm couldn't even pierce my skin. Upon hearing this, Qin Xiajun, who was standing nearby, gestured towards Luing and exclaimed to Dong Qinghua, see, I told you, this kid has broken into the 3rd level and begun tempering his very muscles and bones. His skin is incredibly tough now. Without that degree of physical resilience, it would be utterly impossible to shatter those records. With that, Dong Qinghua retrieved a special blood collection needle, taking out a fresh pack from her drawer. With a complex look on her face, she explained to Luing, this is a specialized blood collection needle, designed specifically for 5th level warriors. It should have no trouble piercing your skin. This gave Luing pause. It seemed that both Dong Qinghua and Qin Xiajun must be 5th level warriors themselves, otherwise they wouldn't have access to such equipment. The 5th level needle, a brilliant and beautiful gold, effortlessly punctured the skin that Luing had only just begun to temper with the advanced chapters of the stellar body refinement technique. A single drop of crimson blood trickled into the blood test reservoir as a blue light activated. Both Dong Qinghua and Qin Xiajun found themselves unconsciously staring, transfixed on the device's display screen. Moments later, a value materialized, 123,651. A sharp intake of breath escaped Qin Xiajun's lips, and he couldn't help but marvel. I don't think I've seen a 3rd level warrior this young in almost 10 years. Dong Qinghua's eyes also betrayed a flicker of shock, though her expression remained composed. All right, come over here. Let's get a reading on your combat power index. Qin Xiajun beckoned to Luing. Luing wasn't surprised by his promotion to a 3rd level martial artist, but as for his actual combat power on the path where he becomes strongest, he truly couldn't estimate the specific value. He only knew it had to have reached the standard of a 4th level warrior, but he was unclear by how much it surpassed that minimum threshold. This was the perfect opportunity to find out for sure. Luing approached the combat effectiveness instrument and drew in a long, deep breath. A fire seemed to ignite within his eyes. He activated it. Breath of fire. Instantly, a blaze erupted in Luing's chest, and even his exhalations grew noticeably hotter. The breath of fire was the very first technique he had comprehended from the advanced chapters, and the one he understood most deeply of the natural breathing technique, yet he had never once deployed it in actual combat. The fiery breath coursed through Luing's entire body. It felt as though molten currents were surging through his very veins. 2 hearts thrumming in unison, the Divine Illumination Sutra, the breath of fire, perfect boxing, and the 8-fold power of the stars all converged. If I'm going to do this, I have to go all out. I need to see how far I've come from being the weakest and what my absolute limit is now. Ling took aim at the impact plate of the force-measuring instrument and unleashed a devastating punch. In that instant, his eyes shone with the brilliance of distant stars. Boom! A value erupted onto the screen, 271,920. Qin Xiaojun's face twisted into an exaggerated grimace as if he'd been sucker-punched in the gut. Dong Qinga held her composure slightly better, but her pupils, which had suddenly constricted, betrayed the storm raging within her. A combat power of over 270,000, it was a terrifying number. Infinitely nearing the realm of a 5th-level warrior, even without the gifts of a spiritual master, he is still an absolute monster. Qin Xiaojun mused internally. It seemed this kid was on the path to become the strongest. It took both Dong Qinghua and him a long while to compose the utter shock on their faces. You've now met the standard for a 3rd-level official warrior, which means you have graduated from this camp. You're free to do as you please from this point forward. Qin Xiaojun approached Ling and patted his shoulder, adding, "Thank you, Instructor Qin." Ling responded. Meanwhile, Dong Qinghua activated the printer in the office and addressed Ling. The military region is fully qualified to assess a martial artist's strength. I'm going to print a report for you. Take this back to the Martial Arts Association, and you can directly have your martial arts registration level officially raised. Thank you, Chief Instructor Dong. Dong Qinghua simply gestured that it was no trouble, then asked Ling, "Would you be willing to test your mental strength right here?" Ling froze for a second and his gaze subconsciously drifted to the 3rd device in the room, situated next to the blood qi measuring instrument. Just as he suspected, Dong Qinghua approached the device and explained, "That's right. This is an instrument developed by the Spiritualist Association specifically for the professional detection of spiritual strength." Dong Qinghua then gently placed her hand on a raised, pale yellow hexagonal crystal set into the instrument. This is called an energy crystal. It's a special crystalline ore and possesses a strong affinity for absorbing spiritual power. It was later adapted to test the spiritual power of spiritual masters. During the test, you just need to concentrate and channel some of your mental energy into it, just like this, Dong Qinghua demonstrated. An unusual light flickered in her eyes. In the next instant, the pale yellow crystal beneath her hand began to hum with light, emitting a beautiful, warm yellow radiance. As the instrument chimed, 2 values materialized on the display. Mental strength, 14,324 T. Spiritual power purity, 4.2. Your strength has improved again, and even the purity of your spiritual power has increased significantly. I recall it was just over 3 the last time we checked. Qin Xiaojun wandered over, glanced at the values on the instrument, and sighed. Dong Qinghua shot him a look and said coolly, "Did you think I was like you, content to be the weakest link, just eating and waiting to die every day?" Qin Xiaojun shot up, retorting, "Dong Qinghua, you can insult me, but you can't insult my philosophy on life." Ling observed the exchange between the two from the sidelines. He could tell that whether it was Dong Qinghua or Qin Ziajun, their family backgrounds were anything but simple, especially considering they could become high-ranking officers at such a young age and serve as the chief and deputy instructors of a provincial training camp. Catching Ling's thoughtful expression, Dong Qinghua realized that she and Qin Xiaojun were, in fact, acting a bit undignified. She quickly cleared her throat, straightened her posture, and said to Ling, "All right, your turn. Come and try." Ling nodded and walked over to the instrument. Following Dong Qinghua's earlier demonstration, he placed his hand on the pale yellow crystal column in the center of the device. Qin Xiaojun also hurried over to watch, although Dong Qinghua had made it clear to him that Ling possessed the talent of an extremely powerful spiritual master, with spiritual power that could rival her own. But after all, seeing is believing. He had heard tales of how nobody becomes strongest, but he still held doubts in his heart. If Ling truly had half, I might believe he's strong, but to suggest he's not weaker than you, who is far from the weakest, I just can't accept it. Dong Qinghua glared at Qin Xiaojun, who was muttering, and said coldly, "Do not disturb the test." Qin Xiaojun immediately snapped his mouth shut, staring at the instrument in obedience. By this time, Ling had already channeled his spiritual power into the pale yellow crystal in his hand, just as Dong Qinghua had instructed him. The crystal began to emit a warm fluorescence, though it was devoid of any tangible heat. The sensation was chilling, making Ling feel as if he were holding an icicle that would never melt. Soon, 2 values materialized on the instrument's display. Dong Qinghua and Qin Ziajun snapped their gazes upward. With a single glance, the expressions on both their faces were as if they had seen a ghost. How is that even possible? This time, the stunned cry came from Dong Qinghua. She stared at the 2 values on the device, her beautiful eyes widening with a mixture of shock and utter disbelief. Mental strength, 11,356. Spiritual power purity, 20.3. The first value was impressive, but not the real surprise. Dong Qinghua had already sensed it back at the training hall. Ling's spiritual power was immense, and he had clearly entered the ranks of a 3rd-level spiritual master. Now, the test results merely confirmed her judgment was correct. What truly stunned Dong Qinghua was that second result, a spiritual purity of 20.3. This meant that if Dong Qinghua were to compress and purify her own spiritual power 5 times over, it would just barely match Ling's. But was such a thing even possible? Purifying a spiritual master's power is an extremely difficult feat, let alone increasing it 5-fold. As Qin Xiaojun had mentioned, Dong Qinghua's own spiritual purity had only risen from over 3 points to 4 points. And while it may seem like an increase of only a few tenths, it had cost Dong Qinghua 2 full years of grueling hard work. One can only imagine the sheer shock Dong Qinghua was experiencing. Her gaze upon Luing had completely transformed. If before, Dong Qinghua thought she was looking at a genius who could one day become the strongest, now she felt the calm and handsome boy before her was an aberration, a freak of nature, something entirely inhuman. A 17-year-old third-level spiritual master was already an outrageous concept, but to possess a spiritual purity 5 times that of an ordinary third-level spiritual master was simply unheard of. Qin Shaojun, who had been quiet until now, finally broke after witnessing Luing's test and began cursing loudly, which only served to irritate Dong Qinghua. She smacked him on the head to shut him up. "Do you have a teacher? Did you study spiritual cultivation before?" Dong Qinghua demanded, staring intently into Luing's eyes. Luing hesitated for a moment before nodding. "Yes, I have a teacher. He taught me a specific technique for cultivating my spiritual power." "Really?" Dong Qinghua's intense expression relaxed slightly at Luing's answer. Having a teacher made it more believable. If Luing didn't have a teacher and had achieved this purely through talent, she truly wouldn't have been able to process it. "My original spiritual purity wasn't nearly this high," Luing thought to himself. "It was only after practicing the method my teacher gave me and breaking through twice that I reached this level. Still, that is more than enough to prove your talent is immense." Dong Qinghua couldn't help but sigh. "Even with a teacher, this proves your talent is off the charts. You couldn't have awakened this power long ago, could you?" "It has been less than 3 months," Luing stated plainly to Dong Qinghua. After hearing that, their eyes flew wide open. How? Is it truly possible for someone to achieve this level in just 3 short months? It completely defies all logic. Dong Qinghua observed Luing, a hint of envy coloring her gaze, wondering how the seemingly weakest could surge forward with such power. The moment he awakens, he possesses a 2nd level, or perhaps even a near 3rd level, mental fortitude, and the purity of it is unbelievably high. In all its decades, even the Spiritualist Association has rarely seen a prodigy like you, someone with the potential to become the strongest. "There's an association for spiritual masters, you see." Luing couldn't help but inquire. "You mean you're unaware of this?" Dong Qinghua appeared slightly taken aback, but she quickly recovered. "I imagine your master intentionally withheld this information, fearing it might disrupt your training and your path as you become strongest. After all, the more you know of the world, the more stray thoughts can contaminate the purity of your spiritual power. However, since the topic has come up, I'll elaborate a little for you. Spiritualists do indeed have their own associations, but very few people are aware of their existence, and their headquarters are far more concealed than those of the common warrior associations. The power of a spiritual master can also be officially certified. As of now, you are fully qualified to take part in the certification examination for spiritual masters. If you require it, I can personally write you a letter of recommendation, provided, of course, that it's on the condition that your own master does not object." Dong Qinghua then presented Luing with a locket, a personal token that would aid him in registering as a psychic. "My teacher shouldn't have any objections," Luing stated smoothly. "I've never even seen his face. Each time I receive his guidance, it's done in an exceptionally mysterious manner." Luing didn't even blink, having mastered the art of weaving such convincing falsehoods. Every word he spoke was technically true, yet the overall picture it painted was a far cry from the actual truth. "Your master must be a truly incredible individual." Dong Qinghua was completely convinced. This conclusion was drawn from the way this master treated Luing and the method used to teach someone with such a powerful talent. An ordinary person would have paraded a discovery like Luing around like a golden trophy, but the master in Luing's story allows him to develop freely, not even deigning to show his face. Only a figure with an exceptionally grand perspective could act in such a detached manner. Contemplating this, Dong Qinghua felt a sense of relief. It confirmed that there are no unexplainable geniuses in this world for no reason. Even Luing, who came from a simple background and was once considered among the weakest, has a powerful and enigmatic master guiding him from the shadows. Luing understood that his current level of mental power was so profound it was difficult to justify with talent alone. His journey from being the weakest to this point was just too extreme. It was far better to embrace the narrative generously. And in a way, Luing wasn't lying at all. He truly did have a teacher, one who hailed from 10,000 years in the future, a master whose strength reached the 11th level and whose name was Denani Fang. "I invited you here today, primarily to discuss a few matters with you." Dong Qinghua, having calmed herself, regained her composure and sat down at her desk. Qin Shaojun also dropped his condescending demeanor and took a seat to the side. "Two chief instructors. Please, speak your minds." For the first matter, Dong Qinghua glanced at Qin Zijun. In response, Qin Zijun retrieved a bank card from his pocket and presented it to Luing. "There are 5 million here. This is for ranking number 1 in the training camp, plus an additional reward for your outstanding performance. While the training camp isn't officially over, your display today proves that your path as one who becomes strongest is set. Your dominance is absolute. There's no room for anyone else to challenge you. And don't feel this is insufficient. This is the absolute maximum amount we could possibly apply for." The Eastern Military Region has always operated on a tight budget for military expenses, and the majority of the funds for this training camp were allocated to the daily 3-meal service provided for all you young recruits. Qin Zhajun finished, glancing over at Ling. Let me tell you, kid, you're infamous throughout the entire training camp for your appetite. If we tallied up the cost of your meals, it would easily be 10 million. Are you serious? Those meals were that valuable? Does this mean I can never eat like that again? Ling wondered silently. Dong Qinga shot a glare at Qin Zhajun before addressing Ling. Student Ling. Although the amount is a bit modest, it's more than enough to demonstrate the sincerity of our Eastern Military Region. Ling immediately picked up on the phrase, Eastern Military Region, in Dong Chu's statement and asked thoughtfully, is the Eastern Military attempting to recruit me? Bingo. You've hit the nail on the head, Qin Zhajun confirmed to Ling. Dong Qinghua nodded in agreement, adding, a martial arts prodigy like yourself is destined for the battlefield. One way or another. True dragons aren't forged in the safety of the nest. We have a saying in the military. With blood and steel, we honor the souls of our fallen heroes with the skulls of our foes. A true martial sage, the one who becomes strongest, cannot be born in the comforts of safety. Qin Shan nodded, concurring with Chua's words. The state and the Martial Arts Alliance have granted warriors immense support and privileges, but not for them to simply enjoy them idly. Sooner or later, you will face this crossroad. Our hope is that when you must choose a military region, you will give our Eastern Military Region priority consideration. The Eastern Military Region is outstanding. All the female soldiers have legs for days, and they are flawless. Qin Zhajun declared boastfully, their looks, their figures. They're unmatched in our entire military region. His crude descriptions of the women's features clearly embarrassed Qinggu, who then used her psychic abilities to subtly jab Qin Shajun as he spoke to Luing. Now, let's discuss another matter. Dongqing Shu locked eyes with Luing and stated gravely, Major Qin Xiaojun and I have made a decision. You will represent the Doming Province Talent Training Camp and participate in the Qiming General's selection for the entire Eastern Province. The Qiming General Star selection? Luing's expression was one of pure shock. That's right, Dong Qingsa explained, all provinces in the East host a talent training camp just like this one every single year. The objective is to identify a truly exceptional talent with the potential of a star. Surely you understand what it means to be a representative of the star, correct? Luing nodded, uttering 2 words. Martial Master. Qin Xiajin approached Luing and elaborated, and the Qiming General Star is a future Grandmaster, a general in waiting. Only one such individual is chosen from the entire Eastern region each year, and this single person is selected from among the top champions of numerous provincial talent training camps. While it's true that there is only one General Star of Qiming, and earning the title doesn't guarantee you'll become a Grandmaster, just obtaining it will leave an indelible mark on your record. Every single participant will have this on their resume, and that accomplishment will be immensely beneficial to you no matter where your path leads. Give it some thought. Luing, there's nothing to think about. I'll do it. Luing accepted without a moment's hesitation. In the era we live in, certain things are simply unavoidable. Luing's ambition was immense. He sought to use his own power to alter the destiny of the human race, to turn the tide when humanity was at its weakest. He would be the spark that ignites a prairie fire. From the moment this conviction took root, his fate was sealed. He could not choose a life of peace. Since a battle against the alien beasts on the front lines is inevitable, why not start now? With such a golden opportunity right in front of you, why would you even hesitate to consider it? Qin Jun, thoroughly pleased with Luing's demeanor, offered his praise. Major Dong and I have complete faith in your capabilities. This is the stage where one becomes strongest. If you can't achieve it, then no one in Ding Province can. By the way, I almost forgot to tell you, the reward for the selection of this Juming General is issued directly by the Eastern Military Region, and it is far more substantial than anything this humble genius training camp can offer. I understand. This aligned perfectly with Luing's ultimate goal, to display his immense talent and secure even greater resources. Just then, Dongqing approached him. Walking toward Luing, he informed him, the selection for the Qiming Generals is still a few months away, and it won't officially commence until all the provincial training camps have concluded. I will personally notify you when the time comes. It won't conflict with your college entrance exams anyway. Qin Xiajun blinked, a playful smile gracing his lips as he said, in all honesty, with your current level of ability, it hardly matters if you take the college entrance examination or not. The entire Eastern Martial Arts University system would be vying for you to enroll. In that case, is there any reason for me to remain at the training camp? Luing inquired. Qin Xiajun replied, that's entirely up to you. If you wish to stay, you're welcome to, and if you rather not, you can leave at any moment. Luing considered it for a moment. I think I'll stay a bit longer. Although the training camp's curriculum was now meaningless to him, the specialized gravity and movement training rooms were still incredibly beneficial for his development. Besides, the food provided here was undeniably excellent. This kid, he's staying for the meals, Qin Xiaojun whispered to Dong Qinghua after hearing Dong Qinghua's explanation. Luing offered a simple farewell and departed. As they watched Lu Xing's figure vanish through the doorway, a complex emotion slowly surfaced in Dong Qingshu's eyes. I never imagined that I, Dong Qinghua, would one day feel envious of another's talent, he sighed softly. Qin Xiaojun couldn't help but agree with a sigh of his own. Luing is an absolute monster. We should count our blessings we weren't in the same generation as him. Otherwise, the psychological blow would be far worse than the shadow, sang Pang Cast. I feel sorry for the other boys in this class. He makes them all feel like the weakest. They're all going to be crushed to the point of questioning their own existence. A gloating expression spread across Qin Shajin's face. 1 month passed. Later, Ling found himself standing before B City's Martial Arts Association. It's been some time since my last visit. If my memory serves me right, Chairman Xiao's office should be on the 6th floor. Having returned from the training camp, Ling decided to pay a visit to the Martial Arts Association. As he approached, a furious shout erupted from within the chairman's office. Enough! Old man Xiao, are you deliberately trying to provoke me? Ling, you've arrived. The chairman's secretary spotted him and greeted him. Ling gestured towards the office, silently asking what the commotion was about, but the secretary simply smiled and said, "Why don't you come inside? You'll understand everything shortly." The office door swung open, and the secretary led Ling inside. President, Ling is here. Oh, is he now? Ling, please, come in quickly. Xiao managed a strained smile, beckoning to Ling from the doorway. Hello, President Xiao. Ling stepped into Xiao Yu's office and saw that there was another man present who appeared to be an old acquaintance of Xiao's. So, old Xiao, is this the top genius from B City you're always boasting about? The one who thinks he becomes strongest overnight? The old man in the tunic suit saw Ling and rose from his seat with a condescending smile. He's certainly a young talent, not bad at all. But only Xiao could detect the sharp sting of irony in his words. The old man's words were accompanied by a sneer directed at Lu Xing before he waved the secretary out of the room. This is my old comrade in arms. You may call him Lao Sha. Now, don't get discouraged. Not everyone can be as exceptional as my dear granddaughter. It's a long road before the weakest becomes strongest. The suited old man beamed, patting Lu Xing's shoulder condescendingly and saying, he's the same age as my sign, you know. If an opportunity arises, I could pull a few strings to help you both along. That's enough. See, Xia interjected, his expression darkening. I don't believe that will be necessary. Lu Xing, sensing the underlying tension, paused for a moment and tried to explain, but before he could finish his sentence, Xia cut him off. Lu Xing, you came straight to me after returning. What's on your mind? Xia shot Lu Xing a frantic wink, silently pleading with him not to give old man Sai another opening to boast, and quickly changed the subject. Lu Xing found the situation amusing but complied, retrieving a document sealed in craft paper from his backpack and handing it to Xia. Chief Instructor Dong Qinyue from the training camp requested I deliver this to you. She hopes you'll grant your approval. What sort of document would a chief instructor from the training camp need to give the president of the Small Bass City Martial Arts Association to approve? Before Xia could respond, old man Sai leaned in closer, his curiosity piqued. He cast a peculiar glance at Lu Xing and said, Young man, did you get into some trouble at the training camp and now you need the recommender, Lao Sha, to clean up your mess? Lu Xing couldn't be bothered to respond to him. He could clearly see this old man was just a nuisance. No wonder Xia's expression was so sour when he entered. He was likely infuriated by him. This is none of your concern. Keep your mouth shut, Xia snapped at old man C before angrily tearing open the craft paper envelope to reveal the documents within. Xia's eyes darted across the document's contents. At first, there was silence, but as his gaze fell upon a particular section, suddenly, the hand holding the paper began to tremble violently. His eyes and mouth fell wide open in disbelief. Standing beside President Xia, old man C smirked with smug arrogance. Come now, Xia, don't let a little bad news get to you. Xia abruptly lifted his head, his wide eyes fixed on Lu Xing in front of him, his face a mask of utter shock and disbelief. In a trembling voice, Xia uttered, When did you break through to become a third-level martial artist? Beside Xia, old man C froze mid-movement. He slowly raised his head, staring at Xia, with an expression that suggested he thought his own ears were deceiving him. No one paid him any mind. Lu Xing calmly replied, A little over 1 month ago, the chief instructor at the training camp verified it for me. She mentioned that the military region is authorized to certify a warrior's strength, and all I needed was your official stamp to finalize it. Authorized? Of course, they're authorized. More than authorized. Your chief instructor represents the entire eastern military region. In that instant, Xia's entire demeanor transformed. He stood up straight, his face beaming, and his eyebrows shot up, so high they nearly flew off his forehead. The previous look of stifled frustration vanished completely. I will stamp this for you right now. With his face flushed and his spirits soaring, Xia turned to walk behind his desk with the document, ready to find the official seal. But he was stopped by old man C, who grabbed his arm and yelled, Let me see that file. A 17-year-old third-level martial artist? Is this even real? It can't be a forgery designed to fool you, can it? There's no way one of the weakest prospects becomes strongest this fast. The old man Sai looked up, his face a picture of doubt. He stared down at Lu Xing, his eyes filled with suspicion. A third-level warrior at just 17? How could this boy, who looked to be the weakest of them all, possibly possess such power? Could he truly be comparable to his precious granddaughter? Old man C was in complete denial, his mind reeling with. But before old man Sai could voice his skepticism, Xia Yua shot back. A fake document, you say? why don't you try forging one yourself? Go on, show me what you can do. Can't you see the official seal of the Eastern Military Region stamped right there? You think this is some common forgery? Go ahead and try to get me a fake. Old man, completely incredulous, pointed a trembling finger at Ling and yelled, "You! Weren't you kicked out of the training camp early? How could someone like you possibly have a combat power index of 270,000? Ling met his gaze without flinching. Staring directly into the old man's eyes, Ling replied calmly, "I never said I was eliminated. That's merely an assumption you've always held." Old man C pressed on. "Then why are you back before the training camp is even over?" Ling stated flatly, "For someone like me, the training camp could have been considered finished a month ago. I simply chose to return now." "Oh, and by the way, President Xia," Ling added, turning to face Xia Yua. He continued, "The chief instructor requested you give her a call. She anticipated you might have trouble believing this document and wanted to confirm it with you personally." Xia Yua burst out laughing, "Ha ha, as if I'm the one who doesn't believe things. Me? A suspicious person?" As he said suspicious, he shot a pointed look at the old man beside him. "Still, this call needs to be made," Xia Yua declared, pulling out his phone. With a grin, he added, "I've heard that the chief instructor for this camp is a renowned genius from the Eastern Military Region. This should be interesting. Let's have a look via video call." And with that, Xia Yua initiated the call on his mobile. In moments, the call connected, and the face of Dong Chua appeared on the screen. Dong Chua looked slightly surprised. "President Xia Yua of Base City?" she asked, her expression quickly returning to a professional demeanor. She greeted him with a serious face. "That's me, Xia Yua." "Hello, Instructor Dong," he responded cheerfully. "Hello, President Xia. I trust Ling has made it back to Base City?" At the mention of Ling's name, Old C's face turned pale with embarrassment. He stammered in a trembling voice, It really is Chief Instructor Dong." Just then, a small head popped out from behind Dong Chua on the screen. The girl looked at the screen and cried out in surprise, "Grandpa, is that you? Why are you on a video call with the Chief Instructor Dong?" Seeing Si Lin, Old Man C's face lit up with excitement, but before he could utter a word, Dong Chua turned and snapped coldly, "Say Lin, have you completed the objective I assigned you? You seem to have enough spare energy to get distracted. Your training regimen is increased 10 times for today." "Yes, Chief Instructor Dong," Say Lin replied meekly. She then vanished from the screen. Annoyed, Xia Yua pushed Old C aside and addressed Dong Chua. "Instructor Dong, I've reviewed the documents you sent with Ling, and everything will be arranged for him shortly." "Excellent," Dong Chua nodded. "President Xia, what do you mean, arranged? Ling is the pride of Base City." Xia Yua laughed, then asked, "By the way, Instructor Dong, I was under the impression the training camp wasn't over yet. So why did Ling return ahead of schedule?" Dong Chua replied with an air of indifference, "Oh, that. We decided a month ago that Ling would be the one to represent the Doming Province Talent Training Camp in the upcoming selection for the chiming generals of the entire Eastern Province. He is universally recognized as the one who becomes strongest, the most exceptional talent in this entire training camp. Therefore, this training camp has concluded ahead of schedule for him, leaving him to focus solely on preparing for the chiming generals selection." Xiao Yua and Old Man Xia were deaf to Dong Qingshu's words. It was as if their minds were completely overwhelmed by someone furiously beating a gong and drum inside their heads, with only a few key phrases echoing in the chaos. The chiming general star, acknowledged as the one who becomes strongest. Xiao Yua's head snapped towards Lu Xing, his expression utterly transformed. He had always considered Lu Xing exceptionally talented, but he never imagined he had still so drastically underestimated the young man's potential. A deep, excited blush rapidly spread across Xiao Yua's face. In contrast, Old Man Xia was completely frozen in place. His mouth hung agape. The old man utterly bewildered as he heard Dong Qingshu's stern voice emanate from the screen of Xiao's phone, sounding as if he were reprimanding someone. "Say Lin, get back on your feet. If you can't even handle this level of training, do you still have any hope of defeating Lu Xing?" "Instructor Dong, I don't want to defeat Lu Xing at all. From now on, I'll run the other way if I see him." The voice from the phone was crystal clear, and Old Man Xia's body trembled faintly. So, the monster from the training camp his granddaughter had complained about in her video calls. It was this very same Lu Xing. "Excellent, Instructor Dong. I will personally supervise Lu Xing's training during this time and ensure he secures a top position in the chiming general's selection, bringing honor to our entire Dawning province." Xiao Yua delivered the line flawlessly, his voice filled with pride. "All right, Instructor Dong, I won't take up any more of your time. Let's hang up the video call for now." Beaming with delight, Xiao Yua laughed and moved to end the call. But he never expected Dong Qingshu to suddenly shout, "President Xiao, wait, don't hang up. I need to say a few words to Lu Xing while I have the chance." Xiao Yua was momentarily stunned but quickly grasped the situation. "Lu Xing, regarding your request for help in finding materials for the exclusive weapons of spiritual masters, I've managed to locate almost everything that's available. I've compiled a form and sent you the specific list with all the prices. Just tell me directly what you need me to purchase for you. That being said, you really need to pass the spiritual master assessment as soon as possible. That way, you'll be qualified to log into the Star Network and purchase these items yourself." which would save me a great deal of trouble each time. Alright, that's all I needed to say. Goodbye. And with that, the video call ended. The expressions on Xiao Yue and Old Man Xia's faces were as if they had just seen a ghost. Lu, Xing. Xiao Yue swallowed hard and began to speak. The pitch of his voice strained, as if he were trying to suppress an overwhelming emotion. What did he mean? About you quickly taking the spiritual master assessment. Lu Xing replied casually. Oh, that's because my spiritual talent was discovered during the training camp. So the chief instructor, Dong Qing wrote me a letter of recommendation, allowing me the opportunity to take the spiritual master examination. That's all there is to it. Xiao Yue looked like he was about to explode, practically jumping out of his skin. Amazing. Just amazing. Lu Xing, I knew I wasn't wrong about you. You're the kind of top-tier genius B-City hasn't seen in 100 years. Xiao Yue was so ecstatic his heart was pounding. Meanwhile, Old Man Xia's face was rigid, and his lips were trembling. Lu Xing is a spiritual master, too? In that moment, Old Man Xia felt like the weakest man alive, the final shred of his pride utterly shattering. If you'd like, I can arrange for a car to take you home, Xiao Yue offered, already making the arrangements. Lu Ying was about to hail a taxi at the association's entrance. No, I'll just head home on my own. Thank you, President Xia. Lu Ying politely declined Xiao Yu's kind offer. While Xiao Yu didn't insist, his expression was still filled with a touch of regret. In that case, you must come to my home for dinner when you have time. I'll cook a few dishes for you to try. And by the way, I'll introduce you to a few of my children who are around your age. You should have plenty of common topics to discuss. After the grand car started up, Xiao Yu waved at Lu Ying before turning away. His back immediately straightened, the corners of his mouth curling into a smirk, and his entire demeanor shifted. Lu Ying watched Xiao Yu's car depart through the window, and when he looked back, he noticed the taxi driver observing him with curiosity in the rearview mirror. Catching his gaze, the driver couldn't help but ask, "Young man, what's your connection to President Xia? I can see he treats you with exceptional respect." Lu Ying simply smiled and replied, "Oh, it's nothing. We're just acquaintances." President Xia is always very courteous to everyone. The taxi driver was still muttering to himself when suddenly, a smashed signboard appeared on the ground directly in front of the car. A few words were faintly visible on the wreckage. Hongyan Martial Arts Hall. A crowd of people stood at a distance, watching the unfolding drama. Lu Ying stepped out of the taxi to survey the scene. That's the signboard for the Hongyan Martial Arts Academy. What's going on now? Why is there a fight at this martial arts hall every single day? A few women in their 40s and 50s, carrying vegetable baskets, stood near the martial arts hall's gate, whispering amongst themselves non-stop. Suddenly, a voice cut in. "Excuse me, ladies, has this martial arts hall been having trouble recently?" The women were taken aback for a moment before subconsciously replying, "That's right, it started about half a month ago. Every day, people show up to challenge the dojo, one after another, and many people have been injured on both sides. I even heard that the owner of this hall is badly hurt himself." Lu Ying frowned, asking, "Do you happen to know why?" Another woman quickly chimed in, "I know all about it. It seems this martial arts hall, now the weakest on the block, used the name of a martial arts genius, a young man on a path to become strongest, to recruit a ton of students, stealing business from all the other halls. The other halls were furious, so they've joined forces to put them in their place. At this rate, it's estimated it will be completely shut down in a few days. That sign has been smashed several times in the last half-month alone." Lu Ying dragged his suitcase and stepped through the doorway of the Hongyan Martial Arts Hall. The scene inside was even more chaotic than the one outside. The entire front reception desk had been kicked over and smashed to pieces on the floor. There was a large crowd gathered in the lobby, where it was clear that two factions were in a tense confrontation. Lu Ying could see faint bloodstains on the floor and splattered on the walls, evidence that a fight had already taken place. The two groups stood facing off in the main lobby of the martial arts hall, where all the training equipment and furniture had been roughly shoved to the sides. One of the groups was dressed in bright red martial arts uniforms, with a large character for Chuan printed on the back. At the forefront of the opposing group, a middle-aged man was forced to his knees. Judging by his appearance and the situation's gravity, it had to be Anai Hongyan, the master of the Hongyan Martial Arts Hall. A man in a black martial arts uniform stood over him. Nearly standing 2 meters tall with a lean waist and dark skin, his body was a mass of rock-hard, knotted muscle. The others in the dark blue martial arts uniforms clearly deferred to him as their leader. Hearing An Honen's statement, he grinned, flashing a set of perfectly white and even teeth. "Master An, let's set aside business for today. We are here to speak the language of martial arts. We, from the Tishan Martial Arts Center, have come to your Hongyan Martial Arts Center specifically to request a lesson from you. Lintan, you're merely a 4th-level martial artist, yet you dare to challenge us now? You're just exploiting my father's injury to make a name for yourself. Have you no shame?" Before An Honen could respond, An Wang, who stood by his side, shot back. "Linton, you've gone too far this time. My Hongyan Martial Arts Academy already promised to halt new student recruitment for a full year. What more could you possibly want?" And Honen fixed his gaze on the man in the black martial arts uniform across from them and spoke in a low, strained voice. It was clear that An Honen was gravely injured. His face and lips were drained of color, and he periodically had to raise a hand to his chest. The young woman beside An Honen was none other than Annie Wang, an acquaintance of Lu Ying's. Lintan, however, just laughed, saying, "How amusing. The right to challenge a dojo isn't something you schedule. Your father, and Honan, being injured is his problem. Me coming here to challenge your gym is my business. Since the Hongan Martial Arts Hall dares to hang its signboard, you must always be prepared for it to be smashed." As he spoke, Lin Tan unleashed his powerful aura, forcing the members of the Hongan Martial Arts Hall to recoil, their faces paling as they staggered back several steps. And Honan forced himself to his feet, an unhealthy flush instantly coloring his cheeks. His expression was grim as he nodded slowly. "You are correct. If a signboard is hung, one must have the strength to protect it. I, and Honan, arrived in Bass City 20 years ago, a lone fighter who built this entire foundation with my own 2 fists. I could do it then, and I can do it now." The effort of speaking aggravated his condition, causing him to erupt into a violent fit of coughing. "Dad?" Annie Wong cried out, rushing to support him with a face etched in worry. "I'm fine," and Honan insisted, raising a hand to stop her and shaking his head. Seeing this display of weakness, Linton sneered from the side and said coldly, "If you lack the strength, don't make empty boasts. A 17-year-old, second-level warrior, is that the kind of prodigy you claim to teach? And Honan, you deserve to be crippled. It's no wonder you're now among the weakest. I've told you before, Luing isn't my father's formal student. He's simply a member of our hall." Annie Wong desperately tried to explain. Lin Tan waved her words away dismissively. "I don't care about the details. What I know is that you poached more than half the students from our affiliated gyms, all under the name of that boy, Luing, the one who thinks he becomes strongest overnight. Dare to reach into our pockets, and don't be surprised when we sever your hand. Your students left your academies of their own free will. Who are you trying to blame for your own failings?" Annie Wang retorted, gritting her teeth in fury. "Oh, I know," Linton replied smugly. "And that's precisely why we're here today, to tear down the signboard of your Hongan Martial Arts Hall. Once your dojo collapses and those students have nowhere else to turn, they will naturally come crawling back to us." Linton clapped his hands together decisively. "All right, that's enough idle chatter. Hurry up and send someone out. I'll take care of all of you at once. Today, I will proceed to the Wushu Association to formally dissolve our martial arts hall." The faces of those present were etched with both sorrow and fury.